Hello, Internet world. Welcome to Land Down Under. And tonight we are discussing Sisters of the Vast Quack, Nuns in Space. Yay!
Who wants to do it like the Muppets, pigs in space, but nuns in space? Me.
Yeah, that's exactly all I was picturing when I was doing it.
I'm imagining pigs wearing wimples now. Yeah.
Yes. Well, we're going to talk about the wimple thing. Anyway, so basically this was picked via, it's one of our mini reads, and it was picked via a poll. So that's how this book was chosen. You know, some of us read it. I think everybody here definitely did. So let's start off with what people thought. Let's go with Matt first.
Yay. I really liked this, hey.
Awesome.
I normally, when I have a short read, I often end up going, oh, well, I wish it was longer. But this one for me was like the perfect length for this story. It just worked for me, which is unusual for a shorter story or a novella. So I was happy about that. It's sci-fi, it's set in space. I was saying to Kirsten earlier, I like reading about, I don't like religion, but I like reading about religion set in the future to see how they keep current and what they do to, you know, keep the message going. The other thing we talked about is we both felt the same thing. It felt like there was elements of like Firefly here in terms of the world, the universe.
I would say Serenity specifically in terms of the plot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a little bit of a Farscape vibe with the living ships, which was kind of cool. But yeah, if anything, my only complaint was for the first third to a half-ish, I wasn't quite getting it. But when the whole sort of like suddenly they're getting a new pope back home and they're sending out a new priest, and once that sort of kicked in, it really took off for me. Yeah. So yeah, I really liked it. Very, very much enjoyed.
Me?
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't hear it. I only heard half of what you was like.
Sorry.
And I'm like, it sounded like the end of my name. Yeah, I'm kind of agree with Matt. I quite enjoyed it. Like, I'm usually not a short story reader, but I did quite enjoy this. I found it was slower in the beginning and the second half, because it took me a few days to read the first half, and I think I was only actually about a third of the way through today, and I read the last 2/3 today and got through it really fast, because I found that it really picked up towards the end and became quite a page turner towards the end. And yeah, like I agree with what Matt was saying. I was already talking to him about that this evening about I got a Firefly kind of world building vibe, not less in tone as far as like, because that, you know, Firefly has that kind of light-hearted tone a lot of the time, but like the whole central government taking over everything, and then there's been this war in the past that's now over, you know, that sort of thing was very similar. And yeah, I kept thinking of the ship from Farscape because it's a living ship. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, so we can probably get in more detail later.
Awesome. Elizabeth?
I was actually rather ambivalent about this book. It was fine. It was fine. But I felt like the obstacles were overcome too easily. I also did not agree that this was a good length for this book. I feel like there were some parts that needed to be built on more, and other parts that could have been cut entirely. So overall, just ambivalent.
Sarah?
Spoken like a true copy editor. I love it. I enjoyed this. Yeah. As length, it felt good. I felt the end was a bit rushed. I agree with Elizabeth. There were bits that I felt they could have done a bit more development on, in particular around the Mother Superior. But, you know, I enjoyed this. I didn't feel, when we read the Becky Chambers short story, which left me very melancholy, I didn't feel that way about this one. I thought, I have a lot of problems with the Catholic Church, and I was a bit worried reading this, but I actually liked that they addressed some of my issues, that actually was topics in this. I really liked that. And I watched some Farscape, but I don't remember it. Like, I wasn't a big fan, like it sounds like the Baileys were. So I didn't know that live ship type thing, and I really loved that. I love that exploration. And yeah, again, like I like it when there's sci-fi world building when there are no aliens, where basically humans have you know, what is it, populated colonized and populated the universe. I think, you know, we see that in Firefly Serenity. What was that one with Mel / Elizabeth? What was the book? The Ancillary series?
Ancillary Justice.
Yeah, that was the same kind of world. And yeah, it's one of those, it's, you know, look, if we can learn nothing from the USSR is that you cannot get so big, or the Roman Empire, right? So you can't get so big that you can take control of everything. But I really enjoyed it. I wrote some notes down for topics of discussion, and I thought it was a really good one to talk about, because it wasn't perfect, because when we really love something, we often kind of don't have much to talk about. A good pick.
I agree that the ending felt. Oh, sorry, Mel, you haven't gone yet.
No, I haven't, but it's all right. It's quite often by the end we tend to start chatting before everyone's done. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say I agree that I think the ending was quite fast. But I do have that same issue a lot of the time with short stories, where I'm like, usually in the point in a normal novel where you're like, shit's starting to go wrong, and now it's going to go even more wrong, and a lot of other bad things are going to happen before we resolve it. In short stories, it's often like, here's the climax and it's already solved straight away. And that was solved, yeah. And it did feel like that in this, but I don't read a lot of short stories, and I often find that that's the thing with short stories, but I mean, I kind of expect that with short stories. I'm sure there's some that are really well done that don't feel like that, but because I haven't read that many, I find it a lot.
Yeah, I feel like this one was it had touched on. I feel this is the thing. I feel like it definitely didn't have the depth that it could have had, but I'm not sure the writer had the capability to write the depth that she was suggesting at. Does that make sense?
Say the second part again.
I agree.
Say the second part again.
I think that she touched on a lot of things that had depth behind them, but I'm not sure she had the talent as a writer to go into that depth.
Right.
And I think it worked as it was, which is she wanted to sort of brush across these sort of ideas, but then just tell a really good story at the same time.
But I appreciate, actually, Mel, we should let you go, because I want to speak to that point that you just made. So let's hear from you first about what your thoughts were.
That's basically what I thought. Like, I thought it was.
Oh, okay.
That's basically what I thought, which is that it rushed across these sort of bigger ideas, and it was sort of hinting towards them, but it didn't really go into them. And in the end, tried to tell just a really good, fun. You know what I mean? Action story. I don't have an
issue with that, because it's an author who knew her limitations, who's experimenting, trying things out. Good for her. You don't want to end up like, what was the one that I had, Pushing Ice, where you just, you kind of delve and then you never kind of explore, and you're trying to explore too many things. Yes. You're not talented enough to explore anything particularly deeply. I had so many issues with that author, who really could have done with a good copy editor, let's be honest. Yes. Whereas I felt like this author is like, I want to explore a few things. I'm trying some stuff out. This is a safe place to do it, get some feedback, see what responses are. And she's built a world she can delve into it other ways. Like we're learning a lot. Like, she wants to explore it further. Great, you know.
And I mean, I don't know. I haven't looked into it, but this author is not someone I've heard of before. So I'm guessing she's fairly new. And so to me, this is just sort of her testing herself out and seeing where she goes. And I felt like it was, definitely could have said a lot more if she wanted to, but wasn't necessary for her to do so either. She still told a good tale. Yeah. And I think in a lot of respects, she, rather than trying to ask the questions, she sort of posed an idea and then answered it, if that makes sense. So she didn't try to go, hey, let's explore this idea. She just went, here's an idea and here's the basic answer to it, which is these, you know, instead of going and exploring why the central government is doing what it's doing and what is the right answer here and all of these things, she's like, no, this is wrong. And that's it. So, but yeah, that's sort of where I felt with it. But it was fun and I enjoyed it. And hey, I love a story that puts females at the centre. So that was really exciting. And the fact that they were all very capable of what they're doing in their varying skill sets was really exciting too.
I also liked how they weren't, she sort of set some things up like they were going to be this conflict that then they kind of just accepted, like the nun that decided that she wanted to leave the order because she had fallen in love. I was expecting that to blow up into this big drama, and then they were all like, okay, like, we get it. Like, one of the nuns was like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, but most of them were just like, okay. And it didn't become this huge thing, and I quite liked that, and I liked that.
I liked as part of that. Sorry, just because it's part of it. I like the fact that I think it was Sister Lucia. No, the other one.
Faustina?
The one that was Faustina. Yeah, Sister Faustina was like, I know that this is going on and I could raise it and then it would become a discussion with everybody else, but instead I'm just going to give her the space to figure herself out, so that when she did tell everyone, she had made up her mind and it wasn't a discussion. It was that I'm telling you what's happening.
And I know, and I actually, when she was being accused, this is Faustina, sorry, you're being blind, just let me know. No, none of this is working. When Faustina was being accused of keeping secrets and stuff, I'm like, yeah, because they're not her secrets. And her job as a communications officer is to keep people's privacy. And so I felt there was almost something that people didn't understand in her job. And yes, she'd come into it as a place to hide, or as a, you know, like I guess in the past, I have nowhere else to go, so I will go to the convent type thing. So I thought that was a nice play on of why women ended up in convents in the past. But I also appreciated in ways I think others didn't, her understanding of the privilege of my job as I hear everything. The privilege is sometimes I decide what I'm going to do, but at the end of the day, some of this isn't my business. And I thought it was really good, you know.
It's just who you want as the communications person.
Well, yeah,
really, isn't
right?
it?
It's exactly
someone that'll like do their job and keep their nose out of your business. But like, I really liked that. And I liked that the other conflict they had with the deciding whether to let the ship mate also kind of got sort of decided without a big, like, I don't know what I was expecting, but sometimes in these books you have those tropes where it's like, oh, here's going to be the thing that everybody fights over, and it kind of wasn't, and it ended up being this whole external threat. And I guess I like that as a I like stories where there's not conflict within my characters, that there's an external conflict, and they're kind of united together against an external conflict rather than that infighting. I don't enjoy that. Like, I get that it's realistic, I suppose, and it's, you know,
I think if it was a full-fledged novel,
it's not fun to read.
Well, I think if it's a full-fledged novel, she possibly would have explored that. Like, it was almost, she had all these setups, that because it's like, oh, I have this much time to say it, then I'll focus on it. And to be honest, in a novella, or Elizabeth can tell us where this sits, because I've never known.
It's a novella.
That an external conflict is kind of the right thing. Like, internal stuff needs a lot more character development and delving.
That's true.
So, you know, I was just thinking about what we're about to read, you know, with the heist young adults who aren't. What are their names?
Oh, the Aurora Crows.
Aurora.
No, I thought we were reading Crows. No, I was thinking about the Crows crew. Sorry.
Six of Crows.
Yeah, so Naomi and Karina's choices of, they're always like groups of young people, and I always get confused of who's chosen who. So yeah, like the Crows, there were external forces, but they do have their own internal conflicts, you know.
I think it's a common thing with novellas that you often get one or the other sort of thing, because there's not enough time for both. So
And it's better to figure out one of them right instead of end up like pushing ice where you can't resolve anything properly, you know. So
I feel like you're a little bit bitter about that book.
yeah, because I remember Elizabeth asked me, she said, why did you choose this? And I was like, because the premise sounds awesome, but it just was badly done. And what's ironic is that afterwards I read Rendezvous with Rama, or listened to it, which is the inspiration for so much stuff, right? Arthur C. Clarke, I think his is like late 50s or early 60s. And you're like, okay, like it's not that it's an outstanding book, but he's chosen the direction he's going to go and he sticks with it, right? So in Rendezvous with Rama, there's absolutely there's no conflicts of character. It's all about exploration and conflict of environment. He just went, I'm doing this, and this is what I'm doing. And I was like, yeah, like Clark worked it out and just went for it. And yeah, like you said, Kirsten, I enjoyed that because I was like, I don't have to kind of keep track of who's in love with who or who's in a relationship with whatchamacallit and stuff. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Where's Matt gone? Has he turned his camera off?
He's doing something else on his iPad while he's talking to us.
Sorry, I'm trying to diagnose something that's gone wrong at work.
He's doing work on Friday night.
Yeah, because shit's broken.
Shit's broken. Yep. That's what you have to do. That my husband has to do that all the time.
I'm here in audio spirit, though.
Yeah.
All right, let's get on with the book, guys.
Yeah.
We are recording. No. I was just like, probably don't want to record too much work chat. Everything else we go off on topic all the time. Who cares? Yeah. Now, Wimples in space still existing. What do we think? They don't even exist now, really. Like, no one really does that anymore.
Well, they did mention that specifically and say it was something that fell off by the wayside and they brought it back.
Yeah.
It was helpful,
I know, but still. It felt very impractical.
If it was like some sort of, if there's a change in how conservative the church gets and they might be a bit more like, all right, we're bringing back as many of the old things as practically possible, and you know what, you can still wear this in space, so you will wear this in space, kind of thing.
I wonder about the design too. Maybe the design is different to what old-fashioned ones are like, because in space it probably actually would make sense to have your hair covered and out of your face around. So like if it's not really long but it's kind of tight fitting to your head, that kind of would actually
if it was just the rail bit, that'd be fine. But if it's the full wimple with the whole neck gear and everything, that seems a bit extreme.
Yeah. But different orders have different wimples anyway, so it'd be...
Yeah, that's true. Like, do you guys know Sound of Music much?
Yeah. I may have watched it multiple times.
Sorry, did you want me to sing? Sorry.
Okay, so you know at the beginning where you see all the other nuns and then you see Maria, and Maria's in quite like
she's got the novice one.
Yeah,
she's got the novice one. Like I see, we live in a Greek community which has both Catholic and Orthodox, and they've all got nuns, and they actually, some of them have houses, and they were where we lived. There was one that got richly redid there. I wouldn't call it a convent, but I'd call it nunnery house or nunnery. Yeah. And they wear like Maria style ones, and they still wear them around the hood, but they're wearing basically uniforms which look closer to nursing uniforms, I would say, like the scrubs and stuff, but like, but certainly not full regalia. So I wasn't imagining
No.
Yeah. You weren't picturing Sister Act there.
No, I was imagining more like what Maria's wearing, where it's like, just the headgear.
That to me I could deal with, because I get what they were saying about being visually recognizable as what they do and everything. And I understand that side of things. It was more along the lines of the practicality of it all that I was sort of questioning. So
and that's why I'm thinking, like, for in that amount of time, I would imagine the design would be very different to what we would necessarily, especially because there were so many. They're really in our time, even, like, there's so many different versions of a wimple. So I'm imagining that this would be a different version again. Like, there was a point in the story where they talked about a song. I can't remember what the song was. Was it a song? And they were like, we think this was from back before this time. And then when they said what it was, I was like, that was from way later than that. And obviously they don't, because it was so long ago for them. Like, it's like things that are hundreds of years old. For us, we don't necessarily know the history of, because unless you've really studied history, you get stuff wrong.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was now. And I don't have the book. Matt's got it. So I know someone can
I'm
remember
flicking, but I
whether it
can't
was a
see
song
it.
or
I
it
wouldn't
was
know where it was. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what it was, because I remember thinking,
search.
if that's the thing I think it is, that's from way later than what they just said it was. But that would, totally make sense if it's from such a long time ago that they don't really understand.
Yeah, well, I mean, we
eras.
do
Like,
things
for
like
us,
that.
like, different decades, different decades of the 20th century are very different. We'll be like, well, that wasn't from that decade, it was from this decade. But for someone hundreds of years in the future, it's like, well, that was all 20th century stuff. Like when we look back on fashion, and people are wearing fashion from like the Victorian period, but that was like nearly
Lord of the
years.
Dance.
Lord of the Dance, that's what it was. And they were like, this is this traditional organ thing. And I was like, yeah, but, and then I was like, well, I don't know whether there was another version of that before the version I know of that was in the 90s. But I'm also like, well,
there was. Like, it's a very traditional folk song.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's an old standard from.
But they also said organ, and I thought it was on like flutes, like pipes, and so
songs can be adapted to different instruments.
Yeah, so I was like, okay. But,
I mean, it probably would have been organ, like, back a long time ago, or actually probably not even all that long ago. For like, I'm thinking of my grandmother's rural church. They probably only converted from organ not that long ago.
Yeah. But yeah, I did think, I was like, well, that's interesting, that what they are saying is not necessarily when it was from, because I can't remember what they said about when it was from either.
Let me see.
We do that a lot. Like, I was in a couple of panels last weekend where they were talking about influences of Austen and things on sci-fi, fiction and fantasy, and a lot of Edwardian and Elizabethan and things were getting mixed up all over the place.
Because, and that happens all the time, because we're like, well, that was ages ago, and we don't like. And people say, I'm wearing this Victorian outfit, and it's like, yeah, but that was the fashions throughout the Victorian period changed a lot. Like, but even Queen Victoria was queen for a long time, and fashion changed a lot throughout that time.
Yeah.
But then people have this idea of what's Victorian. So, like, I was thinking,
Edward took the throne. Yeah. You started to get that more slighter silhouette. Anyway, sorry, I know a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit about fashion. Stuff. Just because it's always interesting. Anyway.
But yeah, I'm just thinking.
Sorry, Kirsten, you were saying?
No, I was just going to repeat pretty much what I've been saying. Like, I just think it's interesting if you kind of go, oh, I was just wondering, like, are they getting that right, or I don't know very much about it. So,
what I found curious was the choice to go with the actual Catholic Church rather than just generic space nouns.
Like, to keep it specifically that it is Catholic, they still have a Pope, and yes, but at the same time to also sort of go this whole, but there's not enough priests route, so we've become much more independent and we're able to do more things. But now we're trying to pull you back in and you priests again to rule you, and it's like, oh, that's going to go well.
Yeah, I thought this was a wonderful snarky comment on the church.
Yeah.
Which, of course, I'm a huge supporter of. It could be patriarchal. Religion is by and large, it has been patriarchal. And if you have big institutions with a lot of money, like the Catholic Church, they're not really looking to change how the power structures work. Have you, I don't know if you guys know CPG Craig on YouTube.
Yeah.
He makes these fantastic animated kind of explanation videos. They're very funny. But
Love
he did one called He Who Has the Keys Has the Power. And it's very much like this is, and it's like, it even plays in today about, white privilege and like why things haven't changed is because who has the privilege, it's easier for you to stay where you are, right? So, yeah, I thought it was definitely very, yeah. Anyway. Sorry, I made notes. And I'm also aware, like, you know, we're being broadcast to the world.
Who cares? I don't care if I offend someone because we're talking about religion.
I just wasn't convinced that the Catholic part of it was necessary, because on the one hand, it's really easy to replicate that same power structure without labeling it as Catholic, and I mean plenty of novelists have done that. Yeah. But there wasn't enough specificity of detail in what she's portraying to say Catholic, if you know what I mean.
I was just going to say before, I wonder whether the author chose Catholic because it was what she was most familiar with and it was easiest for her to write about because she was more familiar with the Catholic Church than other church.
That's very likely.
Yes, but like they do say, you know, write what you know. So maybe she picked that because that was what she knew best.
And the author, I read up a little bit about her, and she's openly queer. And you've got queer characters in here, which was awesome as well that it wasn't an issue, because I was thinking it would be an issue, and it wasn't. Which I was like, that's cool.
Even when the thing is kind of an issue, the issue is that she is in love with someone and is thinking of leaving the order. It's not that she's in love with a woman.
Yes.
And they don't even act like it's shocked or anything. It's not like they're like, oh my goodness, you're in love with a woman, but that's okay. It was just like, that was not even an issue. It was, like you said, Elizabeth, it was more about, you know, you took this vow and you're going back on your vow, which was understandable that's what they were upset about. But
well, your vow, if you think about what a nun was actually doing, they were marrying God. So to go back on your vow is actually, you know, in a weird way, is divorcing God. You're divorcing yourself from being a bride of Jesus. Like that's the description of a nun. So it's like you made a vow in this. Who needs to mute me?
I'll do it. It's fine. I've got it. I'm on top of it.
Oh, sorry. Anyway, that was all. So yeah. And in fact, I'm surprised they didn't make a bigger deal of it in a weird way. But I don't know if that's because Faustina was there and was just very supportive, and maybe because she's quite a feisty person, she helped kind of keep some of the other opinions at bay. I don't know.
Leadership is good in that respect. Like if you show strong leadership to, like you saw it even then when there was that little bit of dissent about her leaving, she pretty much shut it down and said, "Oh, I thought she had the right to make her own decision." And
I really liked her character.
Yeah, I actually liked her and was it Lucia?
Lucia, yeah.
Lucia, is the one who left?
Lucia.
Yeah, Lucia.
Yeah, the two of them as a like I could see how the two of them together as a leadership team would work very well because they complemented each other very well in that respect. Which is one of the problems.
Sorry, Mel, go on.
I was just going to say it's one of the problems I think about hierarchical leaderships. It always wants to put just a single person on top when it's like sometimes actually people work better in pairs where you've got those two sides to balance off each other. And if they've established a good rapport with each other to do that sort of role, it works best and becomes less stressful. But yeah, keep going.
And Lucia, she was the one who left, right? Or
no, that
was Gemma. I think Gemma was
Lucia was the one that was very nice and very direct and open and honest.
Cool.
I was going to say that
I got confused. Sorry, Elizabeth.
That their arcs were not complementary but opposite. So Faustina has her come to God moment at the end, whereas by the end Lucia has actually lost a bit of her faith, which I found was quite interesting.
Yeah,
and like a good sort of balance, the continuing balance between them.
Yeah, it was actually. I actually really liked Christina's whole initial story about the whole why she was there, which I found hilarious that she was being judged by their mother superior for it. I was like, given your history, interesting that you are doing that. But anyway,
but she also accepted it. And I think that another Mother Superior may not have. Like, it was actually, she said,
Mm.
I ask you not, like, don't make fun of this. Also, you know, I think the Mother Superior had, like Christina, had gone through her own journey, perhaps. And yeah, I would have liked to know a little bit more what was going on in the Mother Superior's mind. I made a lot of those assumptions myself of those interactions of her, like, saying to Christina, you're not to make fun of this order, because I think she'd been in it long enough to go, these are people who are here to do good work and they have their reasons. This is not to be abused, you know. But I also think that's why she let her in. She's like, but I also know we need good minds, and this can be a place of refuge, and it's an opportunity for people who have none. So
I feel like if your goals are in alignment in that you want to do good work for other people, it's less about the faith and so much about can you let those people who have their faith continue with their faith, and then you can continue to work and find a safe place for yourself alongside us.
Which
and
Faustina
I feel like
demonstrated that she could.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like that's like we said, I think you said at the beginning, Sarah, there's a history behind nuns taking on people who not there just for, I'm here for God. That's the idealistic view of why people join and join missions and things along those lines, but it's not the reality.
No, often it was the only option.
Yeah.
Either you came from you were an unmarried daughter who'd reached an age and were unmarriable, so you got sent to a convent. You were a young girl who got into trouble, got pregnant, you were sent to an order. So it was a place to hide women that men were ashamed of.
Kind of along with those, sorry to jump in, Sarah, I was just going to say I'm currently reading Realm of Ash by Tasha Suri. And it starts out because the main character is a 21-year-old widow, and she gets sent to, they call it a hermitage. It's where they send all the widows, and they are supposed to spend their time in prayer and remembering the dead and that sort of thing. It just reminds me very much of what you're saying about, like, the nuns and like the reasons for people to join. The same sort of thing. But excellent book so far, by the way.
Yes, I heard good things about that one.
But it's good so far.
Okay, guys, we need to talk about Our Lady of Impossible Constellations.
Actually, can we just back up a little bit? Cause
I had one more comment on that other thing too.
I was just going to jump in about the Reverend Mother, because I found her to be one of the weakest links of the plot, I think, in that like we do get a bit of time with her and stuff, but the kind of the full revelation, like, of who she is and what she's been through comes late, and doesn't really needed a bit
She's
more.
not meant to be really the point of view character. We only really went in her head to fill in some blanks, didn't we?
I'm with Elizabeth, I wanted more history. Like, and it didn't even have to be from her point of view, but others thinking about what had come in the past. Like, they're all terrified of this press showing up. They're all terrified of Earth taking back. Like, what the hell happened? They all have their own, and I'm with you, Elizabeth. I felt like there was a weak link to that senility shouldn't have been why it wasn't explored.
I feel like the weak part of the link is that her current identity wasn't linked strongly enough with her past identity.
I agree.
And so when she starts throwing the weight of that past identity around, it doesn't have enough weight or impact to it, which is why I felt that the ending, like when they overcome the obstacles, it's just like, fine, whatever.
It's a bit of a Deus Ex Machina, really.
It was Deus Ex Machina.
Oh, it was definitely that.
Where I was going with all of that was to link it back to Mel talking about the ship, was that so she's been through this terrible thing where she's kind of responsible for the deaths of many people, and so in order to prevent the further deaths of many people, she decides to crash the ship, right?
Mm-hmm.
The pregnant ship. But she doesn't at all think of the ship as a living creature.
Yeah,
She doesn't think about
that bothered me too.
Yeah.
Because I was like, we're all talking about this baby on the planet. What about all the babies on the ship? Nobody cared about them.
Yeah. And all
but she doesn't even think about it as a living thing. Like
soldiers are not people, but they are no, I was with you about that. And I feel like there could have been a more interesting, like she kept saying, oh, I had almost forgotten about that life, or I spent so long trying to let go of it. Whereas I think if there actually been exploration of her throwing herself into her work, never forgetting, but always linking it to what she wanted to do good, or trying to penance for it or repent for it. If that had been this constant like link of going, that happened, but I wanted this, and I, like in the way that is it Gemma was one? No, maybe it was Lucia. She was the scientist. They're like so intent on the work, and I feel like there could have been more in that. So I'm with you, because I feel like that when she became Mrs. August, it wasn't quite connected.
Yeah, it didn't really mean anything to us.
Yeah.
Like,
whereas
okay,
I think if there'd been this whole thing, you've gone, oh, she's this, and there's the circle completed.
See, I would have liked more foreshadowing. Maybe not have it spelt out earlier, but I would have liked to be going, what's her story? Where is she from? What's going on? And I didn't really feel that. I wasn't like, they kind of had a little bit at the beginning, but I wasn't curious about her past. I think if they'd made me really curious about who she had been in the past and then revealed it, it would have been more interesting. But
and it doesn't have to be a foreshadowing of I've forgotten who I am, like I've nearly forgotten who I am and now I'm really forgetting, or it's all coming back. Whereas it could have been a foreshadowing of I'm forgetting and I can never forget. I need to remember so I can continue like that would have been really good foreshadowing. That would have been really good character development to come to this end point. I just felt like one of those circles where it's all like dotted lines, like there's bits missing. That's what it felt like when it came full circle. I'm just like, but there's bits missing in this. I don't feel it's all a solid line. It's a dashed line circle.
I think the dashed line circles can work if you do it properly, but it's not like an evenly dashed line.
Well, that's something. There's huge chunks missing out of bits of it, and I was like, did it come full circle, or did we just like go across the side of it? And I'm like, hang on, what?
Even if they'd introduced that character. Sorry, Mel.
I just wanted to let Matt know that he's muted if he hadn't noticed, if he's trying to say anything, that's all. Oh, good. Just checking.
Yeah, I was going to say, even if they'd introduced this Mrs. August or whatever her name was earlier in the book, but not told us that it ended up being Mother Superior, I think that would have been more interesting. Like that, here's some background on who this person was and what she did, and even maybe make a bigger deal about that, so that when you found out that she, and then drop some clues that she's, I don't know. I'm not a writer, but I know what I enjoy to read, and I think I would have liked.
You're right.
I'd like to have that moment to go, oh shit, she's that chick, and it was more like, oh, so apparently she was this bad chick in her past, and now she's going to use that to get them out of their trouble.
I agree though that's what's missing. Like it was only way we knew about this past self was through her own recollections. Nobody else mentioned this person at all.
Even though they say that like her recordings are still sometimes used, and her voice is very familiar, so that people will recognize it if they heard her speak. I mean, that's fine to say, but you need to show it to us.
Show don't tell.
I had one other comment before we moved on to the ship. So I put a note down, which was under the desired length of Wimple for their order. So usually those messages were about acquaintance and protocol. The desired length of Wimple for their order, a new translation of the liturgies. What station had a shipment of communion wafers available? Anyway, so I made a note on this, which because I was in the, it was just early on because we're only like 10%, and I was like, and this is the bullshit I can't stand. Even in the far reaches of space, men are still telling women what to wear and how to behave. So I was pissed off at this point. But then what I really liked, I was like, okay, before we move, sorry, I'm going to my sorry, the new Kindle, the Kindles are just, I don't know why they just where was it? Yes. And then I don't know how far in this was, but I liked this bit where I don't know who's telling this to Festina. Who was it? Actually, I can't see who it was, but she says that one of the other nuns says, if you wanted a religion where men and women of the religious life had the same level of authority, you should have been a Lutheran. So I was like, it's, well, this author is definitely knowing what she's doing. And yeah, like,
she's definitely having a dig at the Catholic Church.
She's absolutely having a dig at the Catholic Church. She's absolutely, making a point here. Like, and she could have written about something different, but she wants to talk about like men and women, the political issues and that type of stuff. So I was like, okay, feeling good about this, and also became a thing when that priest showed up.
Well,
I don't know.
No, I'm going to disagree with you there, Sarah, because I think that, have you ever heard of the sexy lamp trope?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Do you mean like
if the woman can be replaced by a sexy lamp in the plot and it has no discernible effect, then that's not a good female character. I felt like Father Giovanni could have been replaced by a lamp.
Oh, totally.
Or a very persistent email, perhaps.
Oh, the email, yeah. He could be.
Yeah. He also wasn't around long enough to cause the problems that he should have been causing. And I just watched, I'm sorry, that was the point I was going to make next, was I've just watched the Keira Knightley version of Pride and Prejudice. Have anybody else seen that?
Oh, okay. God, please don't start me on that version of Pride and Prejudice.
Okay.
I happen to love that version of Pride and Prejudice, by the way, just so you know.
I didn't mind it. I didn't mind it because I just rewatched the BBC thing after listening to Helen Zaltzman and her compadre, which was very funny because it is kind of weird. But anyway, I watched this version, which was actually very well done because I think Ang Lee maybe did it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe
no, that's Sense and Sensibility.
That's just Sense and Sensibility. Anyway, the director of this did a good job. But the person who plays Mr. Collins in this is, I mean, it's such a fun role. It's such a fun role. But the Mr. Collins in that Pride and Prejudice was who I was imagining as the priest that showed up.
Yeah.
Which is just the most ineffectual man ever, right?
I mean, any of the Mr. Collinses would make a great Father Giovanni.
But I'm just...
they're not young enough.
But they're just showing up, thinking they can all these women will be so happy to see me. I'm here to save the day, and just being the most, being pushed around.
See, I would have loved to see him show up with his all this is what the church says and trying to change them all, and then have him end up giving in to them at the end, end up having him come around to their point of view, and I was kind of hoping for that to happen, where he's going to come with all his rule book, and then by the end of it, he's chucked his rule book out.
I do kind of feel like knocking him out and shoving him into an escape pod is also pretty satisfying.
Yeah,
I was pretty happy with that.
But that's the Fairley Brothers version of this.
I don't feel like there was enough time to do much more, though.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, and he was 21 or something? He was fresh out of the cradle.
Which
he's been brainwashed. You're not going to turn him around.
No, but see, that was why I thought he'd get turned, because he'd realise how naive he'd been, and
he's more life experience.
And go out into the real world and see what stuff was like in the real world, and then realise that they had a point about what they were talking about. And
actually,
but again,
right.
You need more time.
There's a missed opportunity for a spin-off character, right? Spin-off series.
But again, I think in long stories, I read lots of long books, and I think in terms of plots that take a lot of time to do.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. He wasn't a well-drawn character.
I think if instead of having to go save the day at the colony, and instead he travelled with them while they went and did some of their works, he might have seen some things that might have moved his mind in a different direction, but there wasn't time.
Yeah. No. He was there for a bit of comic relief and a bit of
I feel like there was things hinted at that they didn't deliver on around that, because they kept hinting that, I think it was Faustina was thinking that the Mother Superior sounded like she wasn't going to do what he said and all of that, and that she had these plans, and she did, but she didn't. And I was kind of a bit disappointed by that. I was sort of like, oh, I thought she was going to have a lucid, really tricksy moment there, but she didn't really. It was Faustina and Lucia that managed to do it all. So,
and I kind of, again, like I was a little bit like Kirsten, like this. You had, for me, there was kind of two ways to go. You either had someone who showed up who was very, very political and manipulating, very understanding what was going on, like very able to, very sociopathic, right? You know, almost Machiavellian in their attitude, because you had other people who were moving chess pieces around, so you kind of had that opportunity, or you had, like what Kirsten said, had an opportunity to have him have a character arc as well. But he was the midpoint, by the way. I was looking at it going, boom, midpoint, he shows up. So, you know, that happened. Anyway, that was all. We can move on to the ship now.
Thank you for being so patient, Mel.
Just two quick points.
Yes, Matt?
No. That's what everyone else said. Before we get to the ship, just 2 quick points.
It was another 20 minutes or so, but anyway.
We're still talking about the book. We're not on.
I don't really care, honestly. I'm just making fun. It's fine. I don't care. I basically wanted to say about the ship that, gosh, that was a squishy ship.
You know, people have been saying that it reminds them of Farscape, but for me, it's Yoon Ha-Lee's Nine Fox Gambit, like. Because the ships in that are like moths, giant moths.
Oh wow,
living moths.
That sounds cool.
Have you guys not?
No.
I have.
No.
Okay.
That would be why we haven't made that connection.
We're all like,
sure,
okay.
yeah, that's fine. I had thought that it had been a previous pick, but apparently not. It's fine.
It reminded me of that, and also of the living ship that, well, it wasn't really a ship, but the living creature that they found in Star Trek Next Generation. In that it
was Gomtu.
Yeah, I knew you would know.
Yeah.
I can't believe that you knew that. Oh my god.
Yeah.
He knows a lot of things about Star Trek.
Trying to mate with the Enterprise because it's like in mating season.
Was it trying to mate? I thought it was trying to get milk. It was like, you're my mother.
Oh yeah, you're right. Sorry.
I might not remember the name, but the story plot details.
It's the little one. It's the little one. Because
because the big one dies and the little baby that was born is Anyway, it reminded me of that kind of more as well. But I was also like, how do they communicate with it and tell it what to do?
Yeah, they don't go into detail about that.
No, they don't.
And that's the thing. It seems to not be very sentient. Although, did anybody else do what I did and Google the, you know how they said it looks like the blah, blah, blah back on Earth? I forget what it said they were called, but I Googled them and I was like, these are really cool.
Oh, what was that? I don't remember.
Yeah, I was doing it. It was right at the beginning. They mentioned, like, it was like a scientific name for a creature, and they said it was very similar to the such and such that live on in the ocean on Earth. And then I Googled them, and they're like these green, like, sea worm snail things. They're really cool.
What were they called? The sea what?
I can't remember. They said it was a very scientific sounding name.
Is it the sea sluggy thing? Hang on, where's my camera? Is it the sea sluggy?
Yeah, those. Yeah, but that was not exactly like that. It was right near the beginning. Somebody have the book. Somebody has the book. Look it up. It's got a name.
Jeez.
And it was a long name, and I can't remember. No, it wasn't like that. It wasn't. It had a special name, and they were more green, and they were.
They did. It's a scientific name.
These guys?
No.
Okay.
I'm looking for italics.
These are all types of sea slugs, by the way.
I'm not quite sure how early we're looking.
How cool they look.
Oh, Elysia chlorotica.
See, this is why I couldn't remember what they were.
Okay,
and you can't even type it in.
How do you spell Elysia?
Somebody put it on their screen.
Yeah, hang on. Yeah. I've got it coming up. if I can type. Sorry.
But yeah, I fell down a little bit of a wormhole looking at stuff on Wikipedia and stuff
See wormhole
about them.
Oh, I did like that when the ship was mating, like that they made all of these little jump transport spots around them when they were leaving. I was like, cool. Yeah, that's cool. Oh, okay, right.
Cool. I like my guys. I think a ship that looked like that would be cool.
They kind of like the very first page of the book. They're talking. They refer to it as a beast. Like,
look at that.
I think
you've got like living pod, eating pod. Yeah, you know, social like with
a distributed. They and I'm sure at one point they kind of liken it to other kinds of livestock as well.
Yes,
like
they do.
These are very much
cows.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We're talking about that because there was
Catholic argument.
Yeah, it was the argument of whether or not it had the right to
not as in like not as what it looks like or what its heritage is. That's just for argument's sake.
For argument's sake, they were making the comparison of which
but I don't think it's.
I didn't know where I felt on that one.
It's that it's definitely a blend of organism and technology. Like it's been engineered. But
they grow it on lattice work as well.
So
it's like a plant where you kind of it's almost like it's a being, but you're able to train how you want it to grow, like you would a plant where you can say, I want you to grow up this way.
But just like when Mel was asking about like how they tell it what to do, I don't think they have to tell it what to do. I think they can control it pretty easily, and that's
like
how it's designed. But there are certain base instincts that are inherent to that organism that sometimes might exert more of a organic pull over its systems, for want of a better word. But they don't have to sort of like ask it to take them to a place. They just go, turn on the engines and go, and it goes. It's kind of like got a big technological yoke on it kind of thing.
Yeah, which is what made me kind of think Farscape, because that was kind of similar, although that ship was a lot more sentient than this one seems to be. But it still was this kind of like, we can just control it with our control panel until it decides that it's not going to listen to us anymore. And
and I thought it was interesting how they were checking its health, and that actually reminded me of Star Trek Voyager, because it's got the instead of gel packs. Thank you very much. Just go to the technical language to Matt. And how they sort of would inject things into it as part of the engineering crew and things on those lines. I was like, that's fascinating. It was because that, of course, is how you would need to take care of something like along those lines. So, and even down to the way that when they went to check on the eggs, and they were like, some of them are viable and not viable, and if we don't remove these ones, it would be bad for the health of the ship and things on those lines. So I thought it was really fascinating stuff.
Definitely an animal husbandry side to it. Like I felt like the author had done enough research or understood enough about farming techniques to understand how you industrialize animal husbandry to a certain extent, but this is on a slight, like a different scale. Like it's one to one, but it's massive, so you still have a lot of those concerns.
But my favorite bit about it was the doors.
Oh, they were cool.
They did not make me feel very happy. They're kind of gross and weird, but also I was like, but that's right. That's what it would be like if you were on a ship like this. Like that.
Do you know what it reminded me of? Do you know what it reminded me of? Cat bus.
Cat bus, yes, exactly like cat bus. Exactly.
I actually kept imagining that sound. You know that sound when the cat bus door? Yeah, that's what I kept imagining the doors sounding like every time they opened. Wow.
Sphincters are great things. Right? Who are you asking?
Elizabeth,
I
know who Cat Bus is.
Good, just checking. That's a perfect analogy. But you know what I think actually is the best analogy for the ship is the ship from Saga.
Oh yeah. yeah, it was more plant than animal, but yeah, pretty much otherwise very, yeah.
Yeah.
I made a comment in here where I don't know who this was. It must have been Gemma, because she was the engineer, right? She was the ship's engines expert.
No, she was the scientist one.
Who looks after the ship?
No, you're right. Yes, you're right, because she was checking on the eggs and everything. She was
kind of both.
Really.
Yeah.
She was a bit of both.
I mean, she was a scientist,
and she was working with Lucia, because Lucia was more the doctory person, and they were working in conjunction.
And they were working on scientific about how to heal some of these things using what they learned from the ships. Yeah.
Yes.
So so she said something where she was working with the ship, giving inoculations and stuff, as you do. And she says, "Sorry, girl," and she rubbed the muscle until it turned a healthy dark green with hot with blood. And I made this note, except that, there we go. Okay. I said, captains often refer to their dead ships as people. She did this. Are you okay, old girl? Oh, she's breaking up, all this. Yet the nuns struggle with anthropomorphizing their slug ship. Like, they have struggle with the fact, they go, no, it doesn't. It's like going, it's still a being. Like, they were struggling with it. Like, whereas like ages is like, oh, she's not feeling it today. Like, that is something's constructed. Whereas this is actually a living being. And then, like, I thought that was a interesting juxtaposition of how you read about ships or how captains are. I don't know if they actually are that way about ships, by the way. This is all my experience of captains in, narrative-based things.
Yeah.
I don't know if captains really feel that way about their ships now, because often they're put on different ships all the time, if they work as a captain. But certainly, you hear it all the time, and certainly in sci-fi, what is Scotty? She cannot hold it, captain.
Oh, it's a very old naval.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing. I read a book about sailing that it was kind of like a memoir. So it wasn't a fictional work, but it was kind of, it was written in that memoir sort of style. And he was about this guy talking about his life lessons that he learned from learning how to sail. And one of the things that happened when he was really young was he was learning how to sail, and he ran into this woman who had her sailing ship, and she was calling her ship a he, and he was like, you can't call a boat a he, boat's a she. And she's like, well, mine's a he.
Not mine.
And he was like so shocked that she would call her sailing ship a he instead of a she, because he was like, boat's a she. And she's like, well, you're male, and you feel like your boat feels like a she. Well, I feel like mine feels like a he, and that's the way I'm doing it. And he was like, oh, okay. And I remember that stuck with me, because I thought it was really cool.
Yeah.
It's
That's
interesting.
why our cars are always boys.
The thing of like when you think about not modern day ships so much, but like early naval voyages, like people are basically putting their lives in the hands of their ship, and it makes kind of sense that they're putting, personality and humanizing these things a bit, ignoring the gender biases there for a second, but just in terms of like referring to them as essentially human, like, giving them personality, whatever. But then here in the future, it's like the opposite almost. I feel like people might be a bit more uncomfortable about being on a living ship so much, and they might like come away from anthropomorphizing that a little bit to feel more comfortable with being in a living ship.
If they have to admit that it's a being, then they have to start thinking of the morality of what they're doing with this being. And so it's easier to kind of not think about that.
Which is why I think some of us had problems with Mother Superior did.
Yeah.
I likened it more to a cowboy's relationship to his horse. In, not now, but, back in the day sort of thing, where really it was very much your livelihood, it was your means of getting around and things on those lines. And but the cowboy still would have say, like, just because my mare is wanting to have, is in heat, it doesn't mean, I don't think they call it heat, but whatever, they do, there you go. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to just let my horse get pregnant, because that would be very inconvenient for me in my job at the moment, sort of thing. So I was like, I can see where the both sides, and I can see why they're having the debate, because on one hand, even though it is a living being, it is still also our means of doing our work and our job. And at the time when this discussion was going on in the book, we didn't know that it was only a couple of weeks to gestate the babies. When I found out it was only a couple of weeks to gestate the babies, I was like, why is this a problem?
I got the impression it was more because like it's a consecrated, like it's called Our Lady. It's like they consider it like a church, and it's like, is it appropriate for our church to be having sex? That's not okay. That was what I kind of got.
That's what I understood too.
And that it could do it later in life. It was just that it was so early.
Yeah. I think that was more why they were surprised about it, but I got the impression it was more some kind of doctrinal thing that they were like.
I thought that was just part of the argument they were using as to why they should or shouldn't do it.
Yeah, and maybe that was like actually reflecting on that. Maybe, I mean, probably reading too much into it, but yeah, maybe that was the excuse. People who felt uncomfortable about the fact they're on a living ship that wants to have sex, they were like, okay, what can I use to stop this happening? You know, in the same way people are still doing today.
And I mean, the Catholic Church have a strong legalistic tradition of presenting arguments and you know, coming like deciding on doctrine through the presentation of arguments and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I was very much with Kirsten, because it was my big thing. I was the same. Was going, well, what exactly are you doing that, you know, it's like, to your point, Mel, it's not like you're a cowboy, you're like going, we are going to be here but before it gets to November because the snows are coming, you know, like I get that. Whereas I'm like going, what are you doing? You haven't told us what you're up to. You're like, oh, we're waiting for a phone call. We might go here. We might go, like, there's nothing, you know, you have nothing but time, ladies. So why not? I was kind of like, that was, I was like, well, yeah, why not? And as it turned out, I mean, of course, very serendipitous, Deus Ex Machina kind of thing. Like, apparently, these are worth money. So, you know, like another way that you could give back to the church. Like you say, hey, we did this, but we've made a really great, we've donated back, you know, into the coffers kind of thing. It was, because I remember reading and going, I don't quite understand why you have so much, like, why do people have a problem with this? And then, to Kirsten's point, when they got into the whole, but we're a consecrated church, I was like, yeah, but you don't consecrate, you keep talking about cows, you're not consecrating some cows. So
my thing, and what I came back to is if this is a creature that you are seeing enough autonomy in that it should get to choose whether or not it gets to mate or not, what the frickin' hell are you doing using it as, like, did you check
that
it was okay?
I got the feeling that there's a very, like, this state of the human world, if you like, has had some moral progression in areas and moral regression in other areas. And that it wanted, like, not everyone, I think, has the same view on animals, particularly here. And a lot, you know, there's like different viewpoints, and it's not like we have at the moment where there's like a really strong, you know, swelling of like animal rights and veganism and you know, that kind of thing. It's like it's reverted a lot back to almost, you know, like 100 of our years ago.
Yeah, it reminded me of the Bobiverse. As you know, I love those books. I can choose some good books sometimes. And it reminded me of...
Poor Sarah, you've been scarred for life by pushing ice.
Look, I love nothing more than a good bitch session where we all hate a book. So that was fun. Like don't get me wrong, I enjoy those. Like, it gives us ample things to compare and contrast when things are good. Like, why sometimes it's good. So it wasn't a waste of time. It was good. Anyway, it reminded me of the Bobiverse, Matt, because that's exactly, like, there had been so much regression, and going back to, you know, as you might recall in the first book, when Bob is brought back to life as an AI, as someone comes and explains to him what happened, and there's been a huge moralistic change around things, including that he's an AI, he's no longer a person, and thus has no rights to anything, and he has to.
He's basically a slave. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the way that they treat people, and the way that like they talked about like the you know, scarily enough, like basically fundamental Christianity took over. So it's you know, it reminded me of that, and from what I could understand in this book, it looks like something like that happened with the civil wars and things. Like there was something fundamentalist happened.
I think it also probably just war itself would change the way that people's morality towards animals. Like if people are starving and they're not going to be worrying so much about you know, the conditions of the animal that they're eating, and if they might have been hardened to a lot of stuff that's been happening, and so that's a possibility too. Like if the whole of California fell into the ocean because they blew up the fault lines and stuff, and you know, people probably have other stuff to worry about and not even thinking about the animals, you know.
Oh, totally. I think it's, look, I'm a meat eater. I'm not planning on becoming a vegan anytime soon, but I take a stance of, you know, you get in what you get out. Like maybe that's a bit resource weird, but if you look after your beasts, you know, you will get good product at the end of the day. And I just take that stance, like, you know, because you know, you look at China especially, like they employed people from New Zealand and Australia to come teach them animal husbandry because they weren't getting the yields on things. It's like, yeah, because you're not treating your animals with respect, you know, you're not feeding them right, you're not inoculating them, you're not, you know, allowing them to breed at the right time. So there was all these kind of things. So I have a little bit of understanding around that, but this is good about books like this, is it does make you kind of think about things like that, you know, think about, you know, like to me, I'm like, the nuns have nothing but time, right? So let whoopee happen.
Whoopee happen.
Yeah, but if you were a ship who had to get somewhere, if you were on a mission, or if you were like so many of the books, if you had a cargo that you have to get somewhere by a deadline, then I could understand the argument going the other way of going, we can't do this because, you know, this is our livelihoods and our family livelihoods. There's people waiting on this medicine. Like I get that argument. That's the argument that would have swayed me to say, but it's a consecrated ship, you know.
I think the problem that I had with it is that it kind of didn't really have a lot of point to the main plot of the story. And, you know, like they had this argument about this ship. And but it took up quite a lot of the story, this plot line of the ship wanting to mate, right? So I thought it would have made more sense at the end if that became then a conflict where they've said, hang on, we just voted and said this ship has a right to mate. But why is, like, maybe there should have been some conflict about the fact that she was going to ram the ship. Like maybe if there had been, you know, her saying she was going to do that before they left, and then, I know they would have.
I mean, a moment of guilt would have been sufficient for me.
Sorry,
I said
a moment of guilt would have been sufficient.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
There wasn't
some kind of link back to, here's why we made this big deal about the ship having the right to decide that it wants to mate, and letting it do that because it, you know, we should be letting it do that, and then going to this point where, but we're going to make it commit suicide without any choice. So
because I don't think she even, I don't remember, did she even thank the ship for its service?
No.
Did she?
She didn't even have a second. Nobody
really
in. It was no point where the ship. There was any point about, you know, what? Yeah, like you said, Elizabeth. There wasn't even a moment of guilt about it. There wasn't a mention of it. All the babies. It was an afterthought at the end that some of them survived, and that was it. Like.
But that probably goes more with her character. You know, she was someone who had thought she was doing the right thing, killing many back as another persona, and she did it again. Like, because that's the other thing. I'm like, she didn't just kill the ship. She killed a lot of soldiers who were all sound like they were young and dumb and signing up for things that, like, we met one of them on the planet. And, you know, they weren't really knowing why, like, you know.
It wasn't a great decision as an ending piece. It was.
No.
I think my point was more like
really dissatisfying part of it all.
That what was the point of spending so much time on that discussion and that mating thing when it didn't, in such a short story? Like in a longer book, it probably wouldn't have been a bigger deal because it's more just world building and character building and stuff. But I felt like it took up a big chunk of the book, but didn't really matter so much in the end.
So here I'm going to play the devil's advocate and say I feel like it's doing other things for the story. Like I agree with you. I don't think it should have taken up that much space, but it what it does do is it sets up the characters of the nuns, so who they are, what their arguments are, what is important to them, to their individuals, not them as a collective, but each individual. Like who's arguing in favor of letting the ship have the baby.
That's true.
Who's not. And then also like it is signaling the shape of the story, in that like we're looking at the Catholic Church here and their rules and regulations, and how that applies to the lives of these people.
Yeah, that's true.
So in that sense, like I can see why they would, but at the same time, I do agree that it took up way too much time, and it wasn't ongoing. It was more like an episode of a TV show.
Yeah.
I
just kind of wanted some kind of payoff. You know, if this thing happened and now at the end, now I understand why the author made a big deal about this thing, because it's become important. And
that's because you think in novels, whereas I think and it's more of a structure of like a TV show. Like Serenity or something, or
I thought the same thing on the first Murder book. Remember, when we first read that one, I was like, if I was waiting for something else to happen, it's finished almost too simply for me. I was waiting for there to be a double cross back or something on those lines, and it wasn't there because it wasn't a novel; it was a novella. And this is the same
remember
thing.
saying the same thing, and it's it's me. Like I'm used to reading like Brandon Sanderson books that take you know.
I mean, the Long Way to a Small Angry Planet does it successly.
Yes,
novel.
Very well.
Yeah, I would push back slightly on this because the setup, like I totally agree with Elizabeth and understand, because she's bang on, and actually I agree, because that's where I got it. It's like this sets up where people are with their relationship with the church and how their relationships are with each other, and you're into like
and also their relationship with the ship.
The problem is that you're also setting up the ship as another character. It's not a discussion about something else where you could have had that same interplay. You know, where should we go here or should we go here? The church, like, which is what happens later. Faustina said, "Do we go here because the church tells us, or do we follow the call that we set up that we would do this?" Like that would have been interplay around the policies and processes, the church versus what they had agreed to do as an order. But you're setting up the being, and then you get to know this other character, although on a kind of a different plane, and then this plays out. And I think that's where my kind of problem was, is that you've set up essentially this is your other character, this is your companion animal, this is the dog of your story. So
it's a big flaw with the story.
I thought they were gonna like maybe I actually thought it would be like a donkey where it would just go, no, we're not going there. I'm going here. I thought it'd be like a donkey. Donkeys kind of go, they kind of stop, and they're very, headstrong animals. I thought that's what was going to happen, where it was like they were going to wake up and like, why are we going this way? So
I also felt like the scene of what happened there was essentially what happened at the end of The Last Jedi, where she, shoots the ship into all of the
First Order.
The First Order, thank you very much. I was like, that's not they've got a new name. The First Order. And it's a very spectacular shot, right? It's visually is stunning as a shot. There's a lot of flaws in that movie, but that shot was one of those things that made everybody go, yeah, sort of thing. And it had that moment, it had that build up, and it had that moment. but because it was a live ship, first of all, and it also hadn't had the same level of build-up of that point of the plot. Like that one, they'd been trying to get away from the First Order for so long, it had that build-up. This didn't have it because it just sort of all happened at the end. So it didn't have that tension feeling of this is our only choice the same way that that moment did as well. So there's a couple of reasons why I feel like there it worked, but here it didn't work as well. So... Anyway, I thought we've done as well, very well to talk so much about this book for such a short story.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like I've been talking very critically, but I did actually quite enjoy it. Like, I enjoyed it enough that I got through most of it in a day, like, which doesn't always happen for me, especially when it's reading rather than listening. And when the kids are yelling in the background and stuff. So, like, it kept me interested enough to keep going and wanting to find out. And yeah,
I honestly think this would actually make a good movie with some refinements to the story.
Yeah,
I find short stories always make better movies.
Novellas would make great movies, novels, TV series. Like you know, I agree. Like, and I think what's good about this is that we're not like we have critical questions of it, but it's also a novella, and that for me, and like this is, I think she's only really written short stories before this in group publications, and to me this is a fantastic first effort. It shows such promise, and this is exactly where you experiment and try things out, and you know, work out some of your world building versus like those different conflicts. Like, it's a great, like, I gave it 4 stars because I thoroughly enjoyed it. It captured me. Yes, there are issues, but like nothing's fucking perfect. And certainly, you know,
I've had a much worse time reading books by more experienced authors. So
yeah, exactly. And I thought there was such good explorations of different things. I think it just shows such promise, and I'm keen to read what she's going to do next. I had a good time. Put it that way.
There was only one other thing that I would mention, and that was what an interesting book to read during a pandemic.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Especially considering the conspiracy theories out there around our current pandemic.
I was also thinking what an interesting, and although I try not to look at the news because, you know, not my circus, not my monkeys, what an interesting book to read considering what's going on in the US regarding, you know, powers trying to corrupt all process and everything like that. I was like, wow, yeah.
And using religious avenues to, all of that. Yep. You can tell it's definitely a book written by an American.
It was good. I read was it Outland? What was the book? What's the Dennis E. Taylor book? Was it Outland?
Yeah, that's Outland.
Yeah, I read that at the beginning, like right when we were in lockdown. I mean, you're still, sorry, Mel, you're still very much in lockdown. Apologies. But yeah, that was a great book. But Jesus,
I know. I read that like before all this happened, and I was still like, oh my god, maybe we should start stockpiling food or something.
I was just gonna say, clearly this is not a book I should read right now.
Not right now,
no.
A friend of mine recently just finished off a journal of the Plague Year by Daniel Defoe.
Oh gosh.
Because she'd read most of it like a couple of years back and had just the last 50 pages to go, and she said that her perspective on it, because she read the last 50 pages this year, was just such a shift in perspective.
Would have made a difference.
Yeah.
Can you imagine reading the Doomsday Book at the moment?
Oh God, no! They did a discussion on it for the Be the Serpent podcast, and I really questioned listening to it. Turns out it was fine. It was okay. But honestly, I was like, because they recorded that before everything started to happen. And then they sort of debated whether they should release it or not. And they were like, oh, we'll just release it. People can choose to listen to it when they want to listen to it, which is fair. And they put like a preamble beforehand to warn people. But I'm like, Christ, okay, can I actually handle listening to this right now? But luckily, I did listen to it months ago before this all got more worse now.
Yeah. There's one other thing I wanted to comment on, which I thought was really interesting, was how they turned off gravity.
Yeah.
And that it was part of their religious
and
practice and the rituals of and the process of the day, and that they had to change that for the priest. I was just like,
I thought that was interesting because I got a kind of vibe from it. It's almost like not eating meat on Fridays kind of thing. Like this is a penancy type thing they do.
Themselves
and then it's like, the priest who's all like about the rules is like, this is too hard for me, so we're not going to do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's interesting.
But also, like, a lot of the Catholic Church, the nuns were the ones depriving themselves, and the priests were the ones drinking the wine and having the ladies.
True.
I played Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, great place to get to history.
I'm pretty sure some of the nuns had the ladies too, Sarah.
Woo!
Oh dear. All right, guys. I think are we good to wrap it up?
I mean, that's a great note to wrap it up on, so sure.
All right. Anybody out there who managed to watch all of this, congratulations. We're always impressed that you did. Thank you for joining us. And in 2 weeks' time, we'll be reading The Killing Moon by N.K. Jemisin.